Well, as of Monday, word came out that the NFL is taking over the investigation. But, Chris, it's not as clean as it should be as it relates to the NFL stepping in. They're still going to let the investigator previously hired by Washington and by owner Dan Snyder to run the investigation. I think to have a truly independent investigation, you have to acknowledge that it was never independent from the get-go, that there are real issues about the team hiring, selecting, paying the person who's investigating the team. Let's just reset, hand the files over to the new investigator, and let's go that way. So maybe they're moving in that direction. First step is the NFL's taking over the investigation. What that ultimately means remains to be seen. But they had to do it. It was horrible optics to let Washington run an investigation of itself, especially now that the investigation was directly involving the owner of the team.
Yeah, I mean, this is the proper thing. I mean, it's still not all the way proper. I mean, it's not, just like you just said. That's the first thing. We're going to let the person that Washington hired still lead the investigation. How far are they going to really get? Mike, I'll refer to something you said on the article on Pro Football Talk. Just, why would anybody really want to talk to that person that is accusing Daniel Snyder or the Washington football team of any of this when wait, Daniel Snyder hired this person. So anything I say is going to be construed in a manner that, might help out Washington and Daniel Snyder. That's just not a good look for the NFL, and I certainly don't think it's a good look for the NFL right now in the circumstances of the world and where we're at. And, of course, we're very tough on players and their policies and anything they do wrong off the field or might have done wrong, and this kind of just looks like weak. Like, oh, hey, you're an owner, and, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll do an investigation. It just doesn't look good.
Couple of things real quickly. First, according to the Washington Post, Daniel Snyder has released current and former employees from non-disclosure agreements that would allow them to cooperate with the investigation. Now, that doesn't mean, presumably, they can go tell their stories on the record to the Washington Post or anyone else. And I get the impression, because they mention current and former employees being released from non-disclosure agreements, I get the impression they signed those agreements on the way in.
Right.
And that's the way to do it, right? When someone wants a job, they'll sign anything you put in front of them. I want the job. On the way out, to get somebody to sign an NDA, you're going to have to give them some money. And it could be some signed settlement agreements later. But I get the impression, since current employees had to be released from the NDA, they all have an NDA. They're all under an obligation to not talk, but they can talk to the investigator. But here's the thing, Chris. I think back to the bounty scandal. I think back to Deflategate. I think back to the bullying scandal with the Dolphins. I think back to what happened with Jerry Richardson and the Panthers. There's always a sense when the NFL gets involved that the NFL is getting involved in order to drop the hammer. With this one, I feel like the NFL is trying to help Daniel Snyder.
I agree.
That they're not truly going in an unbiased, objective way to gather the facts, and if need be, to remove Daniel Snyder or otherwise punish him or the team. I feel like they're trying to set this up for some sort of a soft landing. And that's just the visceral sense I get based on the way the NFL's handled this versus the way the NFL's handled all of these other situations where it's clear the NFL is coming after someone.
Totally seems like that. I don't know if you remember. Remember late last week, you and I were texting, and I threw out, like, maybe the NFL knows something we don't know here, because I wonder, because that's how it does look. You're right. It looks like they're like, ooh, we don't want anything to happen here. We want this to work out for Daniel Snyder in Washington and nothing be bad, behind, door number 3 or whatever that is. It certainly seems that way. So, again, I don't know. And as we talked about last week, I certainly think there were some people that this was a constructed smear campaign and people are out to get Daniel Snyder. Whether anything is true or false, hey, I don't know. Well, time will tell. But, that's sometimes I just go back to that and going, maybe the NFL knows something more than we know.
Let's try this.
Yeah.
This is partially based on what's reported, a little bit based on things I've heard, and I'm going to throw a little speculation on the tail end of it. What if the NFL is treading lightly here because this investigation inescapably will wander into the territory that Daniel Snyder has entered into on his own with the lawsuit in India, the legal action in Virginia, trying to get to the bottom of who is smearing him, and it's become clear he believes it's one of his minority partners, Dwight Scharr. Hasn't come out and said it directly, but he's come damn close to saying it. All right, if that's true and if that all comes up as part of this investigation, if there's any tentacles from Scharr back to anyone else with any other team or with the league office, or like if there's any way, and this is the speculation, but if there's any way this all collapses on Scharr and the league or anyone else in the league that's in cahoots with Scharr, maybe that's why they're treading lightly. Maybe they know that there's a way this all falls apart in a way that puts mud and blood all over the NFL.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike. I mean,
That's all speculation.
Yes, we get it. I get you.
But that would explain why all of a sudden the league is taking a hands-off approach. Not hands-off, but far closer to hands-off than hands-on.
Right, like we're in this, hey, public eye, look, we're in this, we're doing this, but they're not really getting into the nitty-gritty details or maybe wanting to find all the real answers. I don't know where this goes in Washington, but hopefully it all gets fixed the right way.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.